Welcome to Gas, Poetry, Art, and Music. I'm your host, Belinda Subraman. Well, let me show a mirror image of your book, Ray by Ray, from Three Rooms Press, also available through Amazon and I imagine many other online outlets.
Bookshop.org. Yeah.
And even non-film buffs will know about the movie Rebel Without a Cause. And surely everyone has heard of the name James Dean, although they may not recognize the name Nicca Ray, talking about non-film buffs. And he was the director of the movie and your father. He was also the director of many movies. Do you have some favorites that he directed?
Oh, yeah. My favorite of his movies is The Lusty Man. That's and it's a little known, it's a lesser known film, but it stars Robert Mitchum and Susan Hayward and Arthur Kennedy. And it's about this has-been rodeo star played by Robert Mitchum, who is in search of home and what is home. Yeah.
Well, this book, Ray by Ray, was very intense. Beautifully written, but so intense.
Mm-hmm.
How much contact did you have with your father, and did you feel loved?
I didn't have much contact with my father at all. My parents separated when I was 2.5, and I didn't see him again until I was 13. And I saw him about 4 times from that time until he died when I was 17. And no, I didn't feel love. I think that I fantasized about feeling loved, but as an adult, I look back and no, I didn't feel loved by him. I felt, there was one time in particular that we met that I felt like I was his daughter. I felt like he was trying to connect with me. But he was kind of a mess when I was a teenager.
Well, about how old were you when you realized your father was Hollywood royalty?
Probably when I was doing this book. My half brother, I have 2 half brothers, one that's still alive. His name is Tim, and he was my father's son with Gloria Graham. And I remember sitting at his dining room table when I must have been like 21 or 22. And he said, we're Hollywood royalty without the castle. And I had no idea what that meant. It just made me feel completely deprived.
Well, I did have on this other page a note about, you mentioned that by age 17, you had not seen Rebel Without a Cause. How did you manage that?
I avoided it like the plague until I was 33 or 34. I lived close to Hollywood Boulevard when I was a kid, and my friends and I would go hang out on the boulevard, and there were all these head shops and tourist shops, and every single store on that Boulevard had either a photo of Rebel Without a Cause or a poster of James Dean, or like Grauman's Chinese Theater has a little gift shop, and they always had like some sort of Rebel Without a Cause thing. And I would look at the posters and I would look at the postcards and see Rebel Without a Cause, James Dean, directed by Nicca Ray. And I would look at it and it would just make me feel kind of empty, like that, like, who is this person on this postcard that's my father? And sometimes, like, when he died when I was 17, and the years after that, until I started this book and saw the movie, like every time I saw a James Dean reference or a Rebel Without a Cause reference or an article that was titled Rebel Without a Clue or Rebel, without shoes or whatever, I would feel like my father was never going to go away. He was always there. And I felt like it wasn't going to allow me to ever not be rid of him, but to not be under his presence. Like, his presence was always looming, so it was such a big movie.
Yeah. And you wanted to explore the art of your father to help you understand yourself. How old were you when you first wrote about your father?
I was probably 32. I wrote an article for this now defunct magazine called Icon Magazine. And it was for their legacy column. And that was the first time I wrote about him. And I was in college at the New School University at the time. I went to college late in life. And I went to my advisor and asked if I could do an independent study, that I was thinking of writing a book. Because what happened was, after I wrote that article and I saw Rebel Without a Cause, I realized that I was like so many people who grew up without fathers and would look in the mirror and think, I know I see my mother in me, but who am I? Who's the other half of me? And I said, but I'm different. I'm lucky because my father left behind this huge legacy and I can go find out about him. So I did an independent study with the director of the writing program at the time. And that's really, how I started working on the book and finding out about his films and looking at his films. Like, there were so many great people along the way, like the people at the Museum of Modern Art. They screened Johnny Guitar for me. They screened just for me, and The Lusty Men just for me. And and when they were doing a festival of newly restored prints, they invited me as their special guest for the screening of In a Lonely Place. And that's when I met Curtis Hanson, and just like one thing after the other, and opened doors, and I got to talk to people, and I got to see his films, and I really felt a kinship with so many of his films. He definitely put himself in his movies, even the ones that were just for the paycheck. I don't know if that answered your question.
Yeah, very good. Did you feel that you were destined to have a life in the arts because of your heritage?
Definitely. I was always like, I started writing when I was 10, and I wanted to be a writer. um, I would write short stories and plays, and I would bring the short stories to my teacher, and he would read them to the class, and I would go and hide in the bathroom while he read the stories. So my mom never had time for me, and she never had time to read my stories. So, you know, that my teacher like was the one. But I started writing again when I was 28. So I was 8 years sober, and I felt like I had come home, and I wrote this play that was done downtown, and this performance piece that was done downtown. And I was like, hey, I'm going to go to college, because I barely graduated high school. I need to know if I'm smart. And I went to college, and that's like when I committed my life to writing. But yeah, all my life, I just wanted to be in the arts.
You mentioned your father's first love was actually music, and his second was poetry. And that his favorite poet was Robinson Jeffers. Did reading the poetry of Robertson Jeffers impact you, make you feel closer to your father, or inspire you to write poetry?
You know, I was writing poetry before that, but I not with a serious, like it was in journals, you know, like when I was 20, when I first got sober, I was writing poetry in my journals, and nothing that I took seriously. When I read Robinson Jeffers, when I found out that he loved poetry, that he was a poet, you know, and I read Robinson Jeffers. He's pretty dark. The Roan Stallion, you know, and but it made me feel a kinship with him, and especially the music, his love of music, and his collaborations with Alan Lomax. I think those were really, I think those were really happy times in his life, you know, but you know, I write about when Alan Lomax was at the Library of Congress, and he would have Pete Seeger listen to the records, because he didn't have enough time to listen to all the hundreds of thousands of records that he had. I interviewed Pete Seeger, and when Pete Seeger told me that, it was just like, wow, it's like you guys had your own record store there. And my dad, you know, and Lomax were roommates, you know, they lived together in the same house, and they would have these sing-alongs at their house, where you know, Lead Belly and Pete Seeger and Woody Guthrie and Aunt Molly Jackson and all these people would come over to the house, and Alan Lomax would throw out a theme, and they would make up songs to that theme. And my father and his first wife were there embarking on this. And then Alan Lomax was asked to do a show for CBS radio, and he asked my dad to direct the episodes, and they based the show back where I come from on those sing-alongs in their house. Each episode had a theme, and it was the first time Black and white musicians were on stage at the same time. And that, I think that was one of the reasons why they lost sponsorship, because it was 1940.
Oh, okay.
You know, and so I love that time of my dad's life. I love his connection to music. I love that he went to CBGB's in the 70s.
Oh, wow.
You know, he went and saw Patti Smith, you know, like he was.
At age 28, you met the man you're still with, the
Yeah.
artist Jesse McCloskey. Well, and you were clean and sober at that time and had some counseling behind you. And his art is in your book, Backseat Baby. And I think you're working on another collaboration. Yeah. Let's take this moment. Would you like to read something from Backseat Baby, which will show the mirror image of your book?
Sure.
It is from, let's see, Fang. What is it? Red Fang.
Poison Fang Books.
Poison Fang Books. And probably available through many other online outlets. Okay.
Yeah, through Amazon. And Poison Fang Books is Chris Desjardins' imprint. He is a really talented musician and writer himself. He has the band The Flesh Eaters and Christie and the Divine Horsemen, and in LA. He's a pretty big deal if you ever have a chance. Anyway, I was gonna read. Which one? I was going to read Mother. Mother, she is the curtain rising, an everlasting performance spoken in grand jeté. The brush against my windpipe, the singe on my pajama hem, a butterfly kiss on a stormy night, the pitter-patter of raindrops on my windowsill. A beauty queen trapped inside a never-ending hallway, the sound of high heels click-clacking on the hardwood floor, back and forth. The broken record skipping over grooves, the time warp, the stuck in the past, the wink, the curtsy, the ribbons and bows.
Let's mention your mom for a moment. She was also... in the day, very popular in Hollywood. Wasn't she in a lot of movies? Tell us about her a bit and what she did.
My mom was a dancer. She started studying ballet when she was 7 years old. She grew up in the suburbs of Detroit, and the dance classes were in downtown Detroit. And she would take the bus alone when she was 7 years old to these dance classes. And then the family moved to Bakersfield when she was 14, and she would go to Hollywood to take dance classes. And she was in a dance class in Hollywood when she was discovered by a choreographer who was working on the movie Scaramouche. And from then on, she worked nonstop. She was, she danced in variety shows called the Colgate Comedy Hour that featured like the Marx Brothers and Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis, and who she was on shows with, and Frank Sinatra, who she was on shows with. And she danced in a lot of the MGM musicals, like Silk Stockings. That was her favorite, with Fred Astaire. She was in Hans Christian Andersen. She played several parts, but had a solo dance in the opera house. She's the princess. And my mom was stunning. And she got...
do you have any passage marked from Ray by Ray that you would like to read? I was
actually like really wanting to read the last chapter, Bring It On Home, because
sounds like it's what to read.
Yeah, if that's okay. I mean, I talk about I could read something from the beginning where I'm talking about why I wrote it.
Yeah, whatever you feel most moved to read, that's fine.
Okay, I'll read the last chapter then, if that's okay. Just because this book took decades for me to finish, and this was like the last thing that I wrote on it. And And it was a real coming to moment. So it's called Bring It On Home. Wim Wenders said that when he thought of Nick, he pictured that one eye that was like an eagle's eye, one seeing eye that could see through everything. He could see through bullshit, especially his own. He saw himself. Some of the people I met along the way of this journey believed Nick was a man without conscience. Someone who could move through people, wreak havoc on their lives, and not blink an eye. If this is true, explain to me the teardrop stain on the stationery addressed, Dear Betty, Julie, Nicca. I'm not defending his tormented and sometimes cruel character. God, I used to hate it when people would describe him as tormented. It was a way his admirers absolved him from having to take responsibility for his actions. He was, though, a man riddled with torment who lashed out at those he loved with crushing results. He had to wake up one afternoon and find himself with nothing but a masterpiece film to use as his calling card. Yes, he resorted to conning people out of money to make the next great movie. Like any good junkie, he was a scammer. I haven't known any drug addicts or alcoholics who awaken proud of their previous days' intoxicated actions. The only remedy for the guilt and shame, aside from a commitment to sobriety, is to imbibe again with more fervor than the day before until the cycle is the quicksand. Sorry. Until the cycle is the quicksand that pulls you under. He removed himself from my sister and my life because he convinced himself he could bring nothing of value to the table. I spent years listening to what stories those who knew him had to share. I read and reread the transcripts of the interviews with a microscopic eye. I wanted my own concrete assessment of my father. Sometimes the truths left me debilitated for a day or two, but I never considered getting high or drunk, though I did eat too much ice cream sometimes. A girl's got to do what a girl's got to do. Betty used to say, I don't believe in labels, whenever I asked her questions about Nick's psychological diagnosis. After she died, I threw away those labels too and looked at Nick with non-judgmental eyes, setting aside anger, fantasy, hope, love, hate, desperation, pride, and shame. I had to look at the whole picture of who he had been as a father, husband, and film director with forgiveness. It was ultimately by forgiving his and my mother's trespasses and taking responsibility for and forgiving my own that I was able to come to terms with the person he was. Grand, intuitive, sensitive, genius, cruel, too many men living inside one body. He was too much to contain and restrain. His attempts at self-restraint came by way of self-destruction. In death, his mania could be stopped. Self-knowing, self-revelatory, romantic and brutal, defined and undefinable, a walking contradiction, no ordinary man. I say this without daydreamy glaze or fantasy attached. When I talked to the renowned film historian Janine Bessinger, she said Nick was from another planet. Had he been an average man, he would not have made movies that have stood the test of time. If he had not used film to understand the human condition and in turn himself, we would not have Bowie in They Live by Night, Dick Steele in a Lonely Place, Jeff McLeod in The Lusty Men, Jim Wilson in On Dangerous Ground, or Plato, James Stark, and Judy in Rebel Without a Cause. When I close my eyes, I see Nick, an electric current, a white bolt shooting out of the sky. I pray he is not forgotten.
Thank you so much. I think that's a good place to end. I'm so glad that I was introduced to your work, and I'm better for it. And I'm honored to have you on the show. And thank you very much. Hope to see you again. All righty?
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you.
In uncertain times, people turn to uncertain means. Take a Deep Breath is a book of poetry and art, fables and philosophies. It is aimed at the pandemic of anxiety so many of us are now going through, both in our lives and in our inner spaces. The sciences provide remedies, but so do the arts. The ancient Egyptians wrote curative words on fragments of papyrus that fed the burnt ashes to the afflicted. Lacking morphine, Walt Whitman read verses to fallen soldiers on the battlefields of the First Civil War. At their best, the right words are more than therapeutic. They can be curative. Take a Deep Breath emulates these rituals for living in these uncertain times. In the words of the poet, in the middle of the journey of my life, I came to myself in a dark wood where the direct way was lost. It is hard to speak of how wild, harsh, and impenetrable that wood was, so that thinking of it recreates the fear of it. It is scarcely less bitter than death, but in order to tell of the good that I found there, I must tell you of the other things I saw there as well. Take my hand. I will not abandon you to the dark wood. Hold on tight, but remember when to let go. Now, take a deep breath.
The pandemic is waning, but still present. Now the threat of World War III blossoms before spring. Evergreen, mesquite, and cacti are unchanged. As I learn, more friends are dying. The still bare trees are pregnant. Weeds are already here, but green and flowering. I leave them and love them for now. Each year, spring is more important. To see the brown and withered wake up, to know everything lives again. "4 a.m. again, and no sleep. I tried forest sounds, including a stream and an owl. I tried happy TV on traveling, remodeling, and other animals in their habitat. I tried counting breaths and soft music. I tried acupressure and the mantra, be here now. I tried silence, and the static was deafening. Pills aren't working. My reoccurring depression blossoms in a toxic reality. I tuned into World War III, thinking avoiding it was not working. And that didn't work either. Over 5 million refugees from Ukraine have run for their lives. My heart races with them as my body slowly disintegrates. And the world as we know it explodes and burns. Annihilation, a possibility. Night is too dark for sleep.
Line. Where there was nothing, here comes a line. Call it possibility, which is simply a mark drawing down an urge known as imagination. An image occurs revealing two kinds of space. Name them intuition and experience. One may lose the original image in its own smudges, but ink stains itself spontaneous. And here, the image lost, then found, lives in the space made for it. In angles of embrace or pulled apart, elbows on knees, hands palming cheeks, sometimes with head bowed, glance askance at the unknowns still to be etched on the paper's long expanse. No Second Acts by Cheryl Snell. The White Bungalow. Falling down steps chopped with the secret messages of stones. Cones of pink cotton candy. Changing neon telling how many burgers sold. Bad boys with ducktails driving pedal to the metal. Red coals of spent smokes flicked into air stinking of rubber. The Goodyear blimp above tall grass dented with shapes of summer snow angels. Birds swollen with wedding rice. Landlords and ladies. Wall-to-wall shag carpet. Avocado green everything. Sliding glass doors opening onto the corner bar. Afternoon motels. A contract full of loopholes. The only exit visible through the bottom of the bottle they all predicted you'd dive into once you realized you'd live forever in the grip of this small, still town.
There's that time on the train. You had pills for the pain, and you breathed like the rain. Can you see what remains? As we wait for the world to take hold, can you change what you are? Rearrange what you'll be. There are pills you can take for the pain. Electrodes that flow in your brain. There's the world we know is strange. Light me up and breathe. Light me up and breathe. Me up
Wings on a breeze. I dream of feathers, ruffled and rippling by the force of the wind. Sounds like laundry on a line being swept by a brisk breeze. I'm alive, and I lament a life of bitter resentment. The terrible need for approval, now faded with her death, leaves this mind weighted down by thoughts of sacrifice and loss. I regret that childhood dared me the strength to support, while circumstances struck and struck and struck again. She no longer fights the wind to stay afloat and fly to that special castle in the sky. Today she soars without bruised wings, nor battered body to hinder her, while I, now in midlife, I who never knew wings, have sprouted a pair so small, so awkward. Will they enable me to fly one day and try my own flight into the wind? In Our Midst. This next poem is excerpted from the book Rhythm and Rhyme by Dave and Lillian Brummett. This poem speaks of my passion to view every moment as a chance to leave a positive legacy. It is called In Our Midst. How can we justify this life with every breath that we take? Can we influence this hard world? Is there power in the hands of this boy or this girl? There are heroes in our midst, and you know that they exist. They exist in you and I. We are the heroes in our midst. How can we waste away this life when every breath is a gift? A chance to choose whatever fits to make some wrong right or ease somebody's plight. How can we whine about this life when those who passed before had passed through rougher roads and more? And when looked at in this light, the roads we travel are golden evermore. There's heroes in our midst, and you know that they exist. They exist in you and I. We are the heroes in our midst. How can we claim we are conscious when each breath releases anger or some rotting hate within? And are we making changes for the world we're living in? There are heroes in our midst, and you know that they exist. They exist in you, they exist in I. We are the heroes in our midst.
Easy fall Remembering Lara M. Housing scheme dreams escape over the hills. Married at 16, the trees all in bloom. No shock when she left, just a whisky surprise. I got down on one knee, begged for love from the sky. Mother in a cancer ward, why go on living? August sun beating down, cruel rays unforgiving. Take me to yesterday, bring hope to my eyes, when I used to pray, beg for love from the sky. Sweet smell of roses and dead lavender sharp, I held all your stories before your face collapsed. Bring morphine to help us slip through the horizon, a walking concussion, all that's left for the living. Bring hope to my eyes, I kiss your dead face. The trees all in bloom, beg for love from the skies. Poems from a sequence called Songs for Lara. And this is my contribution to Gas Poetry. Thank you for inviting me. This one is called Your Thoughts. Your thoughts. The cool breeze on your cheeks and lips, your strength of being, how it all fits. Together we walk along the old track, dodge pedalling cyclists in unison they ring and surge away, to where the cool of day awaits. The breeze becomes a beckoning wind. I hold your hand to share the comfort of all the joy and tragedy either one of us has known. A silent empathy surrounds me, miraculous and true, open to every mystery you hold deep, as we stroll side by side like I've held you all my life. We've mostly been in different places with divergent views. That feeling of knowing your thoughts is just exactly that, a feeling. Where did you come from with all your eloquent sense, allure, deceptive innocence, and body sharp intelligence that makes me cherish every second of the magic that is you? And this is my final poem, which is called Only Love. Where do you go at the dawn of the world? We sink or swim in our region of being. Open the door, move over the border. No one even knows we were here. As if you are laughing and call yourself angel. Where will your sweetheart be clear in the night? How beautiful you are, shining star in the heavens of everything. Your touch is a blessing and infinite joy. In the night of forever, only love, no matter how vulnerable, can keep us safe. Thank you. Cheers to you all.
'97 coming to terms and goodbye. An atheist faces his own death by Michael Lee Johnson. Wait until I have to say goodbye. Don't rush. I'm a philosophical professor facing my own death on my own time. It takes longer to rise to kick the blankets back. I take my pills with water and slowly lift myself out of bed to the edge of my walker. Living to 97 is an experience I share with my caretaker. It's so hard to accept. It's hard for youngsters who have not experienced old age to know the psychology of pain. That you can't put your socks on or pull up your own pants up without help anymore. Thank God for suspenders. At a certain point, there's no reason to be concerned about death. When you die, no problem, there's nothing. But why am I aloneness? Tea stuck in with denture glue, my daily pill box complete, and my wife, Leslie Josephine, gone for years. Why does it haunt me? I can't orchestrate, play PhD anymore. My song lyrics is running out. My personality framed in a gentler state of mind. I still think it necessary to figure out the patterns of death. I just don't know why. There must be something missing from this argument. I wish I knew. Don't push me. Please wait. Soon is enough to say goodbye. My theater life now shared, my last play coming to this final curtain. I give you grace, the king of swing. The voice of Benny Goodman is silent now. An act of humanity passes, no applause.
Thank you for listening and watching Gas, Poetry, Art, and Music. If you'd like to encourage us, please subscribe to our channel, like, comment if you will, share, and tell your friends about our project. And we hope to see you next time.